Good morning and good day to everybody, all of our watchers, listeners, followers. It's the Energy Realities podcast. Today, just after Easter break in the European Union, not in the Orthodox world. And I hope everyone had a fantastic Easter weekend and wishing people in the Orthodox world a good one next weekend. Today, we're talking about the world on edge, fuel rationing beginning. We don't know. And to discuss these things, we've got Stu Turley, who I believe could be in Oklahoma today, or is he in Texas?
Abilene, Texas. You got to love it.
Awesome. Abilene is so nice and cool, and it has a sister city in Kansas,
nice.
where Dwight Eisenhower was from. And we also have today the indomitable Irina Slav in Bulgaria. How are you today, Irina?
I'm great, thank you. It's finally spring proper. I'm very happy.
So that means flowers are blooming and maybe even the fruit trees?
Yes, our cherry trees are blooming, about to start blooming for the first time ever. And yes, flowers are in bloom too. And pests are on them like you wouldn't believe. They have a special weakness for my daffodils.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're horrible little creatures. But the important thing is that it's warm. I think heating season is over in my part of the world. Not sure about Western Europe.
Well, that's good for you guys. It'll lower your heating costs, given that heating oil and everything else is so expensive now because of the oil crisis and energy crisis we're talking about today. David Blackmon is going to try and join us later. There's a few software issues, of course, and we all know who the culprit is. And I'm not going to say specifically which culprit, but we all know. And I'm Tammy Nemeth. I'm your host today, and we're going to talk about, are we on the cusp of fuel rationing? And I think it's really fascinating that we've got like the European Union energy person, Jorgensen, where he was talking last week about how, well, rationing is just around the corner. And he really means business. And I have to quote this because it made me laugh. Where is it? Right, where he says he means it for sure because his rhetoric is just that much stronger now than it was a couple weeks ago. So when the EU is turning up its rhetoric, it must be serious. So I just thought that was so priceless. Right, where he says the rhetoric we're using and the words we're using are more serious now than they were earlier. So if the rhetoric's serious, they must seriously be serious. So they're talking about possibly curbing demand with car-free Sundays, which is what they did back in the 70s. The new thing is remote work, which they didn't have in the 70s, but now they do. And they're talking about how people should reduce the amount of traveling they do, and pressure needs to be brought to bear for consumers to do their part. And everything's kind of out of this 1970s playbook. You've got the IEA producing its little 10-point plan, which is very similar to the one they did in 2022 and very similar to stuff from the 70s. But the one thing they're not doing from the 70s, which would make total sense, is to increase the production in the North Sea and other non-Middle Eastern areas. So instead, they're doubling down on net zero and green policies. So to start us off, I'm going to throw it out to Irina. Being from the new member of the European Union, what do you make of all this really strong rhetoric now?
I'm very, very impressed with Mr. Jorgensen and his rhetoric and his words, which are very seriously serious, as you pointed out. I especially love all the measures for demand destruction that he's suggesting, which are the same as the ones that the IEA suggested. And I'm willing to bet that Eastern European countries are going to have none of that. until you actually force us to stop driving, we will not stop driving.
Yeah.
But I saw a headline today that the majority of people in the Netherlands are fine with drive-free Sundays. That might be because they have their cakes. Might be because they're a lot more compliant than we are. But a lot of people are obviously making parallels between now and 2020 and the lockdowns, that now we might be having fewer lockdowns or something like this. And again, Western Europe is going to be more compliant, I think, because they were a lot more compliant than we were back in 2020. We hold grudges, famous for it, and we don't like being told what to do, especially by someone in Brussels. For now, there is no problem here. I just checked the news from Bulgaria. We have enough fuel for April, I believe, for now, but probably we will be asked to share it. We'll see how this goes and whether we will ask for any compensation if this becomes necessary. What would being the poorest member of the European Union, but one with a rare refinery that does not import from the Middle East. How interesting a situation this is. I would utilize it if I were a politician, but I'm not, which is good for everyone. Remote work is fine, but how many people can work remotely? And if they can, are they not doing it already? I was thinking about that, and what percentage of, daily driving is actually for work purposes and for pleasure purposes? I'm willing to bet that most people travel for work purposes, not because they like to drive.
Yeah, with respect to if people could do remote work, aren't they doing it already? I would say over the past 18 months, there was a real push in the corporate members of the EU to get everybody back in the office. And so now I think a lot of those people had been forced to go back to the office, would have preferred to stay working from home. And perhaps this is an opportunity to go back to working from home. But I don't know. But what if you're a delivery driver and all those people at home are ordering stuff from Amazon? So does that, decrease the amount of hours on the road or not?
I did not think about that. Amazon might suffer from this. This is a horrible thought.
Yeah, prices might go up because of the transport. And, with respect to the Netherlands, having lived there, of course they can say that because their entire country is networked with phenomenal bike lanes. And it's very much a biking culture. And it's a really small place that is heavily interconnected and densely populated. So of all the countries in Europe, they're probably the only one that could, we'll go drive free Sunday because we do that anyway, because everybody's out on their bikes on Sundays.
Going out for coffee. Change, basically.
It's no change. So of course they'll hold them up as being, the example. Oh, everyone should follow the Netherlands. Well, no one else can, because they're the only ones who've invested in the bike lanes. But that's never stopped the EU propaganda machine.
Yeah, and I love the point about using more public transport. Well, I can't do this, because we have a bus that services our village and a few other villages along this line of the road to the city. But it doesn't exactly set off from our village every half an hour. It's like every hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I cannot use it to replace my car. And neither could most people, because the people who use this bus are the people who work in the city and do not have cars. The ones that do have cars use their cars because they need them.
Yes. Yeah. Which is why the price of gas or whatever, they keep saying, well, if we just increase it, people will reduce demand. But it's one of these things where there's very little elasticity in that, because people can't, they have no alternatives, or the alternatives are just not feasible. Yeah.
And if you destroy demand for transport, you will destroy demand for everything.
Yeah.
For
Because everything
consumer
is based on
spending.
transport.
Yeah, exactly. And everything will be more expensive because fuels are expensive. But I think Europe is once again in a corner of its own making.
So, okay, this is something that's bothered me since the start of this crisis and the one in 2022, is that we're told that all the taxes and charges that are put on the price of fuel at the pump don't affect inflation at all. But when the oil price goes up, that affects inflation. So, all these countries, it's like 40% in some places, in some jurisdictions, over 50% of the price at the pump is tax of one kind or another, whether it's a carbon tax, a road tax, or a VAT or whatever. There's layer upon layer of taxes on the price of fuel. So if they're telling us that if you increase the cost of a barrel of oil, that increases inflation because the fuel cost increases, remove your friggin' taxes.
They are doing it in Asia. I think India or Pakistan or both are cutting fuel taxes. Yay!
Yay, we have David. Hi, David.
Hi. Sorry
you
about
made
that.
it.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Well, okay. Well, everybody, David Blackmon has joined the podcast after
How gracious
struggling.
of me.
Yeah, it's awesome. But Stu, so what's going on in the United States? Is there the same kind of angst about potential rationing or anything in the United States?
For most people, they're kind of griping a little bit, but let me just point out a couple things of pain. And you take a look at the chart. Let's remove this and add this to the stage. As you look at the amount of damage that has been done to the Strait of Hormuz as far as refineries in the Strait of Hormuz, you have the main area in Asia. This is going to be gigantic because California imports 40 to 60% of its jet fuel, diesel, and gasoline from Asia. And so when you take a look at how all this is going to play out for the United States, most of us in Texas could care less. However, most of the people in New York or back east have the Colonial Pipeline, and they get their gas from through pipelines. California is an energy island. So to answer your question, Tammy, around May, if this thing continues to block down, it's going to be an issue for the U.S. For Europe, it looks like mid-April, which is about 10 days, you're going to have shortages throughout Europe. Beginning of April, like today in Southern Africa and in progress right now, you have South Korea is banning exports. China has begun banning exports. And when you take a look at this, the UK and France, the hardest hit in Europe by the squeeze of diesel, jet fuel, and middle distillate products, they're negative. Yeah. I've always said this is all based off of this chart, which is the drone lobbing going on in the Middle East right now. And this is from Bloomberg and the U.S. Department of Energy. And you take a look at the number of refineries. Just because we sit back and say the strait is going to be open for business, hopefully by next Wednesday, let's say that happens, we're 3 months away from getting tankers back and forth around where they need to be, cruise around. We're 6 months away from returning. And I'd like to also bring up to the point, where's the glut is also a very important thing. There's no glut because we've never had a glut. Let me share my screen also, and I want to share that there is more of an issue going on, and that is, here is the Strait of Hormuz this morning. And as you sit back and take a look, there were 3 tankers that were just rolling through. This one is an LPG chemical tanker. This one is very important. I believe this one was going to India. But look at this one down here. This is kind of funny. This is in the middle of the UAE, and there is a real problem. This is called the Queen Sahara. I find this very funny. It's in the middle of the UAE with what's called GPS spoofing, and there's some real problems going on in the Gulf. But there's another main thing that's just now happening this morning. There were 3 large tankers that went right on through here, and they went whizzing through in hugging Oman. And as they hugged Oman, they went all the way through here. So we had a Japan LNG tanker and 2 very large VLCs, very large crude carriers, come rolling through, and they hugged the strait over here. When you take a look at Karg Island over here, there is Karg Island. There is one already there loading up right now at Karg, and this is showing that Iranian oil is going out. This one looks like it is one that is going to go to out of the dark fleet. Does that make sense?
Well, I got to say, I don't agree with the analysis that the United States is about to face shortages and lines at the gas stations. I don't think that's going to happen. That's based on that J.P. Morgan analysis, which I think is highly flawed. California is going to have problems because they're importing.
That's what I was saying.
It's not going to be a problem for the rest of the United States.
If you were here on time, you would have heard me say. David, Texas, we don't care. And back east, they don't care because they get the Colonial Pipeline. So when you get the Colonial Pipeline, there are distribution systems throughout the whole thing. California is an island.
Yeah, California is an island, but you said United States is going to have shortages, or at least that's what I thought I heard. Maybe I didn't hear it right.
Maybe I misspoke.
But I just think the United States is pretty well insulated from this unless there's problem with the infrastructure in the United States, the Colonial Pipeline or the other delivery systems. And it's thanks largely to Canada. Thank God we get 5 million barrels a day coming in here from Canada. And we get a lot from Mexico and less from Guyana and Venezuela and other Western Hemisphere countries. But, that JP Morgan analysis has been, I worry about all the disinformation that's out on X. X has been a real purveyor, and there doesn't seem to be any effort by X to control it, of rank misinformation and active disinformation about this whole thing. And that JP Morgan analysis has been highly misrepresented by users like Mario Nawfal and a few others to try to cause panic in the United States about supply shortages that just aren't going to happen here unless Colonial goes down, and then that'll really be a problem more for the eastern seaboard than anywhere else.
May I make a point? And the point is, I think the California is set to have a disruption of biblical proportions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
when you take a look at California, it oozes over to Nevada, Utah, it goes to Washington, Arizona, and goes to Oregon. So you take a look at they have 7 refineries, 6 are slated to close, 2 are closing fairly soon. You have the CARB rules and the net zero. This is a biblical problem. Cats and dogs will be sleeping together.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Any state that relies on California, which Arizona and Nevada certainly do, and Oregon and Washington, they're going to have real problems because they get a lot of refined fuels from California. The good news for Washington is they have alternatives, but Arizona really doesn't, and I don't think Nevada does either. So they're going to be in deep doo-doo. And it's all intentional. I'm sorry.
Can they get them from Texas, Oklahoma?
No, there's no pipeline. Well, they can get some natural gas from Texas into Mexico, but there's no oil pipelines going out there.
I did a podcast and there was a town hall that I witnessed with a Professor Mache out of California, and he is very, very sharp. He said that one of his students is a tanker captain that is getting his MBA, and he's now out, and he got a call in class, and they wanted to offer him $1 million to show up to tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. That's how desperate tankers are. So we have a oil price right now around the world of $100 a barrel, 119, 111, whatever the number is this morning. But you're about $40 cheaper from delivery. There's paper versus delivery, and that cost is going to match up one of these days. And it is going to be a very big issue coming around the corner. In the next 48 hours, we will find out a bunch of things.
Are we? I mean, there's all these deadlines, and at some point you got to follow through on your deadlines and do stuff. So
yeah, the president
if I
has a big problem with that.
Yeah, like I understand, but at some point you have to back it up. And yeah, so we'll see. MD Bone had a point here saying that he doesn't buy the shortage hype, that oil comes from more places than the Middle East, and not buying those talking points. Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I think there's, when you take millions of barrels off the world market, there's going to be a restructuring of where these things come from. And while that's being restructured and other oil fills the gap, there's going to be price increases, and there's going to be talk of shortages or whatever, possibly to also drive up the price. But it kind of goes to what David was saying about misinformation and disinformation, because there's a lot of people out there who have a vested interest in creating hype around one narrative or another, whether they're shorting oil or doing whatever in the stock market or on poly market or any of these things. And I think we need to be careful in understanding, separating facts from fiction narratives and trying to discern who's trying to ramp up certain narratives in order to capitalize on that for other purposes besides truly understanding the situation. Yeah. But what I would just like to talk a little bit about the refining, because, okay, let's say oil comes back up and the EU and the UK develop more oil or whatever, or let's say they expand their natural gas, because natural gas is a big problem as well, because Qatar is unable to ship LNG through the strait or whatever, and that's putting pressure on things as well. Let's say, take oil, for example. Let's say they increase their production. They don't have the refineries to process it. And the real issue here isn't necessarily that there's a shortage of oil, but there's a shortage of refined products. So, Stu, if you could just pull up the EU chart that I sent you. Okay, so the EU, they're net exporters, or at least they were in petrol, which is like normal gasoline, but they become net importers of kerosene, which is jet fuel, and diesel. And the majority of vehicles in the EU are diesel, and lots of delivery trucks and all this kind of thing. And since 2009, over 30 refineries have shut down in the European Union, and they're anticipating another 40 to 50 will close by 2035. So in the next 9 years, they're looking at closing down like over half of the existing number. So right now there's 73 operating refineries in the European Union. And the suggestion is that by 2035, in 9 years, 40 to 50 of them will be shut down. And so where are you going to get your fuel from? And it's one of the reasons why they've been shutting down is the climate rules. There's the emission standards. There's the fact that a lot of these refineries were old. They were built in the 1970s, aging infrastructure that hasn't, how are you going to meet all these new requirements with this aging infrastructure? So a lot of them had been sort of running down, or it was just too expensive to try to fix them. And then there's been falling margins. Why is there falling margins? Because of all the regulations and all the taxes and all of these other things that go into just trying to operate a refinery. The UK is in even worse position, where I think it was since 2009 or in 2013, they became a net importer. So, it's been 13 years. They've been a net importer significantly of refined products. So I will throw it out there to the gang here. What's your take on this idea that if you're closing down refineries, it doesn't matter how much more oil you produce because you're not going to be able to refine it into the things you need?
Of course, it's obvious, as the graph shows. You have to get your fuels from somewhere, which, on the other hand, if you're not going to support the refineries, then why bother boosting your oil production? If you're going to close down the refineries or let them close down because they can't be sustained in light of all these regulatory burdens. We have got so incompetent people at the helm. It's unbelievable. And I think the biggest sin is their complete inability to think forward. They can set targets for EVs, they can set targets for emission reduction, but it's like they're parroting what other people are saying. They're incapable, they appear to be incapable to think about the consequences, the longer term consequences of their actions.
Or are they incapable of seeing reality because they have this other vision of what the future is going to be? We're all going to be electric. We won't need the diesel. We won't need the petrol. We won't need the LNG because we're all going to be green.
And but we are going to need it. I mean, even the IEA has admitted it. It's really, but I really hope, MD Bone, I really, really hope you're right, and we've got enough fuel and there's no need for rationing. Then again, they might decide to ration fuels just because they can.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key point. A lot of these people like Ed Miliband, all these people who have gone through the Young Leaders Program at the World Economic Forum and are now prime ministers of these various European countries, they're looking at this as an opportunity, okay? Yeah. This is an opportunity to force people to use alternatives to fossil fuels, okay? Even if it means some of them die and there are tons of ancillary hardships in the process. Their view is you've got to force this transition on people. And no one should think the United States is immune to this. We just went through 4 years of an administration with these true believers in this climate cult, Jennifer Granholm being the most obvious among them, but there were plenty of others in the Biden administration. So after the next election, we could be right back in the same boat Europe's in with this thing. And, these people have an agenda. For them, this is a religious belief. This is a true religion. And we should never lose sight of that when evaluating the policies they put in place, because like Irina and Tammy just said, they may go to rationing just because they can. And that's a really dangerous place to be.
Yeah, because it worked once with COVID. A lot of people are drawing parallels between now and 2020 with the lockdowns.
Those are very valid.
It did go well for a while. Then people were out and about first chance they got, except a few nutcases who I hear are masking up to this moment in time 6 years later. But
yes.
I think that if we actually got bank records for the people in the legislative branch in California and the governor's office in California and looked at their bank accounts, I think we would find out who actually is going to benefit from their policies. Energy security starts at home, and none of their decisions have done anything to help energy security.
Well, they would argue differently, right, Irina, where they talk about homegrown solar, homegrown wind.
Yeah, homegrown energy. It's like
homegrown
peach tree or something, homegrown.
What's homegrown? What's homegrown about solar?
Wind and solar, they call them homegrown and clean.
Homegrown.
And clean, because the wind blows in your yard. So it's your wind. The sun. Well, I mean, Angela Merkel basically put a tax when she was in power on people who had solar panels on their house, saying that the sun isn't yours, it's the state of Germany's. When the sun shines down in Germany, that's Germany's sun. No, it's not free.
Solar energy was free.
It depends on how you view that, right? I mean, it was absurd at the time, and the Germans kind of grumbled and paid it. But is that still in place? Maybe, I don't know. But they keep talking about it being homegrown, meaning that this is what they're capturing in their borders, the wind and the sun. And the UK is doubling down on net zero. So is the European Union, saying this is just further evidence that they need to go further faster, just like they did with the Russian thing, right? So there's this impetus where they take really strong action because of the crisis. Never let a crisis go to waste. And then they kind of back off a little bit while people get used to it, and then they push forward the next time. So it's like this ratchet, and they're really pushing now in the UK to approve the solar installations quicker, to have onshore wind quicker. They're now experimenting with, if you live close to where these huge transmission lines are going to be, or there's a solar installation nearby, your prices should be cheaper. They're experimenting in some jurisdictions with this now in the UK. And what's interesting is Ed Miliband, there's now a backbench revolt in the UK saying, we need to develop this North Sea oil and gas, the gas for sure. It could be up and running and piped to the UK by October, if you just give the go ahead. So there's this growing campaign to undermine him. And so there was an article this morning in the Daily Mail saying, where Miliband is like, well, we're thinking about it. I don't know if that's for real, because I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Can Muppets think?
Whoever's controlling can
whoever's
think.
Controlling the Muppet, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whenever Ed Miliband is speaking, we need to know where Larry Fink happens to be at any given moment of time.
Yeah, well, especially because Larry Fink wants the natural gas to power the AI data centers. And so does this give an out for Ed Miliband? Well, okay, maybe we should have this natural gas so that we can use it to power AI data centers for the UK? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, that's the obvious thing, I mean, it's what's happening in the United States too. You still have all this virtue signaling from Microsoft and Google about, we're building all the wind and solar capacity to power our data centers. And they carefully worded in their press releases, yeah, they're building all the capacity, but they're not going to use it to power the data center. That capacity is going to go somewhere else when the sun's shining and the wind's blowing. But they're going to power their data center with natural gas or nuclear to the extent they can get nuclear. Yeah. And that's happening all over the world. If it works in the United States, it's going to work everywhere else. I want to make one other comment about the refining situation before we leave it completely, is that Stu's points about what's happening in California, everyone needs to really think about that, because you can't build a refinery in a couple of weeks. It's a 10-year deal, okay? Because you got to get the permits in place, and then you have to secure the financing, and then you have to build your supply chains, and then you got to build the damn thing, and then you have to deal with all the lawsuits that the green groups file, and then finally, maybe 10, 15 years later, you've got a refinery up and running.
Yeah.
And we've got an example here in Brownsville, Texas, where the guy, they believe that refinery is going to be up by 2029. They might make it in Texas, but you can't do that in California. And so the severity of what Gavin Newsom is doing out there is something that state cannot recover from if they allow it to continue to move forward. You're not ever going to recover from that. You're going to be an energy basket case state from now on. And because of California's situation geographically and their status as an energy island, Stu's points about that becoming a major disaster, not just for Californians, but for people in all those other states that really rely on California's refined products. It's going to be a catastrophic situation. And we're almost past the point of no return. I really believe the federal government really needs to declare a state of emergency out there and take over the whole shooting match related to the refining situation and the energy situation in general in that state, to save those other states from falling victim to their subservience to the wrong people in California. Anyway, that's my diatribe for today.
But weren't there signs of reason making a return of sorts when Newsom tried to court Chevron and Phillips? Was it the second refinery that's about to close? Like acknowledging half-heartedly that, California may need some refineries to remain operational. Maybe somebody told him how long it takes to build a new refinery, so maybe it makes more sense to keep an existing one running or two. And I remember per the reports, I think it was Bloomberg, the old executives had said, yeah, that's a good start, but we need more. And maybe he wasn't willing to give them more. I don't know how this situation developed.
I can do an imitation of hair gel. Here you go. This was him at that presser when he was talking about it.
Yeah.
No, he's absolutely wiped it all out. That's the way he moves. And he was trying to dance when he goes, yeah, refineries. Woo. No,
so he's changed his mind again.
Yeah, he is absolutely wiped him out. And there are two of them that are already, they're ending their contracts and they're getting shut down. This is a gigantic problem. And the carb tax that they are doing over the emissions and everything else are going to shut them down. Here's the problem, and it's the California, EU, UK methodology, and that is California imports 40 to 60% of their diesel, jet fuel, and gasoline, depending on the month. They don't have the import capacity to import 100%. They have limited, because when those refineries shut down, they drain everything. When those refineries shut down, the pipes don't get any bigger to the tankers that come in. So you are going to be short 40 to 60% of your oil and gasoline in California. You're going to have $15 gasoline and diesel. $15 gasoline and diesel will shut the economy down. Food won't be delivered. This is going to be biblically horrible.
Yeah, and I just think of all the military installations in California and how they require all of the refined products in order to keep operating. And is that not a national security risk? And then you have to question who benefits from that.
China.
And yeah.
China and all the people who run the renewable energy companies that are grifting out of the system out there, and the EV makers, even Elon Musk and Tesla, especially Elon Musk and Tesla, benefit from that. Because just like what's happening in Europe, California is, Newsom is leveraging this situation to try to just force people to adopt these alternatives, right? Regardless of what the cost is in terms of human suffering.
They're really obsessed with demand flexibility, as they call it.
Yes.
They have finally realized that it's not going to happen by just trying to replace baseload electricity and fuels with EVs and wind and solar. You need to make people to consume less energy. But this is not going to happen, not so fast. not so, not to such a significant degree as they need it to happen to justify the whole transition thing. And they still have to grasp that. But at least they've made the step towards, addressing the demand side of the equation. It's not good news for all of us and for all sane people, but there is some, some thinking going on.
Yeah.
Some recognition of reality. People are not just going to give up their energy consumption because you tell them to. You will have to force them. You will have to find a way to force them to use less energy.
Yeah. And it's like, it's always couched in euphemisms, like you say, demand, flexibility, and all this stuff. Yeah. And then the overt bribery, like here they were paying people to shut to stop using power during the last crisis. And then people realized, well, I was freezing. I couldn't cook when I wanted to. I couldn't do stuff. And I got paid 50 pence. Why would I do that?
What was the point?
What was the point? I suffered like this, thought I was doing my part, and I got paid 50p. It was like, no. So I don't know what they're going to do next. And, if they're putting solar and wind everywhere, and Ed Miliband had said, well, we want to work with solar panel manufacturers so you can just plug and play, buy it from the middle of Lidl. Just plug them in. And, right now they're in the process of approving the largest solar installation in Europe, in Oxfordshire. In the UK. Like,
holy smokes.
You're the second worst country in the world for sun, and you're going to install. They have to make it so big because they just don't get enough sun. And
that's why you need. That's why I need it to be big.
Yeah. And so there's, European countries are like, well, maybe we should keep the coal going. Maybe we should have more coal. And I just think of how the UK was so proud of blowing up their last coal-fired power plant. Yeah. And they have all this supply, the heart of the Industrial Revolution.
To continental Europe, all this coal.
They could, because it's good coal. It
would be any more ironic than this largest solar power installation in Europe.
I know. But this comes back to the point about, okay, the energy reality is that we need all these different forms, and we have these reliable forms of hydrocarbons. We've got nuclear. We know how that operates. It takes a while to build it. We need these refineries and these refined products. We could use coal power if we wanted. But then the comeback is all of that stuff creates emissions, which is destroying the world. And so if you're a true believer and you think that climate change is being caused by us using hydrocarbons, then what's the argument? What's the solution to reach these people?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer.
Fire all the educators.
Fire all what?
Fire all the educators because they've been indoctrinating the kids.
Yeah. The bureaucrats at the Department of Education who force that on them.
Yeah, but I mean, the Green Party is on the rise here. So it's like there's the Reform Party.
All the parties are green. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, I know.
Please explain this to me. They're all green. They're all pro-transition. They're all pro-net zero. What's the deal with the Green Party?
I know. Like they're just more extreme. So we're greener than the other people. Although the conservatives now have said that they don't support net zero anymore, and the Reform Party certainly doesn't. And so that leaves the left, right? So Labor and the Liberal Democrats, which are, I don't really know what they are, and the Green Party.
they don't know either.
They don't know either. It's like they have to hyphenate. I don't know.
Do you think you can trust the Tories? I mean, they're the party that blew up the last coal plant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and they were in charge for 14 years before Labor took over. And all of that, I mean, they laid the foundation for all of this during their time in office. And so it's like the Republicans in the United States. I've been a Republican my whole life and I hate them. I absolutely hate them. That party is as worthless as any entity in this country other than the Democrats. And that's the problem. We're forced to vote for Republicans because the alternative is a damn Democrat.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is infinitely worse. So I feel like, just watching from afar, and it just feels like Britain's in kind of the same boat. It's you're looking for an alternative somewhere, of somebody who will deal with things at least honestly, even if they don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
I enjoyed my conversation with Liz Truss. She seemed like a very nice lady that really understood energy. And when I asked her some tough questions, she was spot on.
Yeah.
She lasted about 15 minutes.
Right. Because she was going to change things up. Right.
Yep.
And so they just blew her out of office.
Well, I would argue, so, maybe we can have a deeper conversation about this next week, because Rupert Darwell has agreed to join us next week to talk about
I got us off
what's happening in the UK, which is phenomenal. He's so incredibly quick and understands all the climate movement and how that's infiltrated and corrupted the political parties. But to be fair to the Tories, it was the Labour Party that introduced the Climate Change Committee that laid the groundwork, but they did nothing to take it apart. Right. They could have said, we'll repeal the Climate Change Act. We don't need the Climate Change Committee. And they didn't do any of that. And I lay that at the feet of David Cameron, because he came in and said that he needed to change the party. It needed to embrace the green values, because that's what young people want. Well, why did young people want it? Because they were being indoctrinated in the schools to want it. And now they've just introduced it farther and farther down the line, so that the kids in the equivalent of kindergarten are learning about climate change. And it's like one of the fundamental things that they ask people that they're quizzed on in life in the UK. Like, how do you reduce your carbon footprint? What? Why is that a question?
Also, that's why the Greens are gaining popularity, because the Brits are so indoctrinated. Because I was thinking about continental Europe, where non-net zero crazy parties are gaining popularity and even winning elections. I think the EU has, it has to catch up on the indoctrination of children with the UK. You're doing it better there. Well, not you.
Yeah, they are. Germany does it to an extent. I saw it when we lived there, just the stuff the kids would come home with. I'm like, what is this? And so maybe it's just being done in a different way. I'm not sure. But I think Germany's crazy with all the eco stuff and whatnot.
Yeah, it's been crazy for 5 decades.
Germany's flooding of the Ignite mine that they're about to flood is absolutely
insanity,
moronic. Let me just bring to the stage. Let me remove whatever one we had. I had one of these. It was on here. Hang on. Remove. Let me add this. I'm sitting here looking at the global energy monitor, and you sit there and zoom in. Let's take a look at how much coal they're still getting in the EU, and look at the wattage. Let's go ahead and remove. I'm going to remove operating, and now under construction. We still have 221 megawatts being constructed. And then take a look at where they're going. China is not going to worry about that. You have India, and then you have, even down in here, you have the US also now starting to show up back on this map. Oh, look at this. You have one here, Core Natural Power Station. You have one here, and then you have one in Alaska. So there are 3 in the US.
Yeah.
So coal is coming back in. I hate to say this, but guess what? And then you go put the operating in there. Coal is not going away anytime soon.
Man, India is covered up now. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Well, they tried. They were told to put in solar from the World Bank and the IMF. and it didn't really work. So then they were like, oh, you know what? Our people are clamoring for reliable energy. So I think we better build some coal.
Yes. And I don't regret that at all. I'm not sad to see that. I'm actually pleased to see it. I think it's just a necessity. You can't power the world without coal, and we need more of it.
Yeah, and we have the technology to make it burn as cleanly as possible and capture all the fine particulate matter, which is the problem with coal.
Which is the actual pollution, yes.
Yeah. It is an actual pollution, yeah.
And you can use the heat for other things. So like, because when you burn the coal, there's the excess heat or whatever, and you can use that, repurpose it for other things. So
of course, it's used for heating in Bulgaria. Central district heating. Yeah.
So we have the solutions. It's just, getting the politicians to, I don't know, pursue the right things.
Yeah, but that won't lead to rationing, and we need rationing in order to achieve demand flexibility.
And we need AI.
The thing is deliberate, and we need to have energy for AI. Definitely.
Well, the AI will be there to control the demand flexibility, to monitor and ensure that it all goes smoothly. That's why we need it.
Not very flexible.
Yeah, just give us the energy. Why do we need AI? We need more energy for AI to manage how we use our own thing. It's like, just give us our own thing.
To save the planet.
To save the planet.
It really is ridiculous if you think about it. It's internally contradictory. It's ridiculous. But there's money to be made. I have no other explanation.
Yeah. And control to be exerted.
Yeah.
And those two dynamics are so dangerous when combined.
Yeah, because I think the ones who are driving them keep miscalculating people's reaction.
Right, which is why they move forward and then kind of back off a little bit, and then move forward some more and test it out in different areas.
And they're rushing, at least the European politicians, they do always sound and look like they're in this rush to push us in that direction. And of course we'll be fighting back, anyone would.
As they should, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, it's an instinctive reaction. We're not as evolved as they probably believe we are. Let's put it this way, gently, delicately.
Okay, before we go, we have 5 minutes. Can I bring in the International Energy Agency?
Oh, please.
Of course.
Can we talk about Fatty Birol?
Fatty Birol. Because, like, one of the interesting things, if you think about it, I keep thinking of how we're just repeating the same mistakes from the 1970s. And I'm sure that later this year, they're going to increase interest rates to some extraordinary number that will cripple mortgages, and people will go bankrupt, and they'll lose their homes. And then there'll be all of these institutional investors buying up homes and doing whatever. It'll be really bad, like the 1970s. And, the whole point of the IEA was to manage crises like this, to ensure that, countries aren't hoarding and that everybody's sharing and all this kind of thing. And where's the IEA? I feel like they're either missing in action or they're being sidelined. And I want to throw it out to you guys. Why do you think that is?
Well, they told us we need to lower our speed limits to 55 miles an hour, right? I mean, so do you remember that? That was mid-March. They put out that advisory with these 15 steps every country should take to conserve fuel, which was straight out of the 1970s, the Jimmy Carter playbook. I mean, it's like they went back to the Carter administration and found an old document and just copied and pasted it. So, yeah, I think they're totally irrelevant. And I thank Chris Wright for making that happen in part. But really, it's like California's disaster. It's Gavin Newsom led, and IEA's irrelevance has been led by Fatty Birol. The decisions he's made to change the mission of that organization, which was an extremely useful organization until about 5 years ago, and now it isn't. That's my view.
I just went to look for a recent quote by Birol, which is, countries must not hoard fuel during Iran war, warns IEA. Countries are going to do whatever they feel is necessary to secure the energy supply of their citizens if they have half a brain. So shut up.
Canada has no brain. That's all I can say.
Yeah, but you're producing your own energy, so you don't need to hoard it.
Right, but we don't have differential pricing. So Canadians pay whatever the world price pays. So whatever Europe's paying, that's pretty much what Canada would be paying as well. So even though we're producing it right there, we don't pay less. And that's part of having a market system, right? And so same thing with fertilizers. We produce so much fertilizer, net exporter, and farmers, I don't know how many are going to be fertilizing this year because it's just too expensive.
Yeah,
and we don't subsidize.
That's the other thing. People keep focusing on the shortage that's going to happen, right, because of the blockade and Strait of Hormuz. But in reality, what's going to kill the farmers this year is the price. And so many of them just aren't going to be able to afford to plant. Yeah. And a year from now, we're going to have a major, major hunger problem around the world.
The solution in Canada is to extend the credit line. So there's a farm finance group called the Farm Credit Corporation, which is a federal sort of crown corporation, and they help finance different farming things. But it's an extended line of credit, which means you have to pay it back. So they'll let you take out more money to pay for this fertilizer, but you got to pay it back. So it's not like they're negotiating a reduced price. That could be an option for the federal government. They're not doing that. So they're doing nothing to actually lower the cost except deferring the payments for later. And all that does is make the farmers more dependent on the federal government, which, 2 years from now, are they going to default, not be able to pay that back? And then the federal government gets the land. So I don't know. I feel bad for farmers. And where's the windfall taxes on fertilizer companies?
Right, exactly. And in America, what's going to happen is the family farmers, and even more of the family farmers, that is a disappearing species anyway in this country, are going to go completely out of business and have to sell out to major corporations like Archer Daniels Midland. And and so the corporate farmers, this is all great for the big corporate farmers and horrible for the family farmers. And, it's all very predictable. And sometimes it almost, I come from an old family family. And sometimes if you're in that business, it almost feels like it's planned, right?
It feels like that for sure. Yeah. Stu, what do you think about the IEA, Fatty Birol, talking about countries shouldn't be hoarding?
I put him in the same category of Muppet as Ed Miliband. Absolutely a joke. And so when you sit back and take a look at whether or not one of my best Substacks was him, taking a look at what his comments about the UN plan last year. The UN needs to be thrown out of the US. I know he is with the IEA, but I'm with the IEA. Get rid of them, quit funding them. The UN, throw them out of the US, get rid of them, shut them down. I'm out. I'm done. I'm tired of anybody, because if you're not really doing honest work, I don't want to fund you. So the answer is, I don't want to fund them.
That's how I feel about Congress too.
Yep.
And the European Parliament and the UK Parliament.
And national parliaments. Absolutely.
Tear it all down. Start over.
Defunded. Yeah.
I think we just solved the whole world's problems. Get rid of our government.
Solved it all.
Oh gosh. Well,
so what's next week, Tammy?
We're going to be chatting with Rupert Darwall about what's happening in the UK, and probably he'll talk a little bit about the EU and America as well. So that'll be fun.
That'll be outstanding. All right.
Looking forward to it.
Have a great week, everybody.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.